right, so this is Mike McDonald with Upper News, and we are in Santa Clara for SMX, and I'm with Matt Cutts from Google. And so Matt just is fresh off of the, which was...
this was Ask the Search Engines, yeah.
So what did people ask the search engines?
They asked all kinds of stuff. No one asked about caffeine, so we tried to answer that, but people are always asking about subdomains versus subdirectories. Should they block JavaScript and CSS or just let search engines crawl it? The answer is just go ahead and let search engines crawl it.
Oh, yeah?
How much should they use nofollow? Really, you don't need to worry about using nofollow on your own internal links. It's better to just think about untrusted third-party content, put nofollow on that. But really, I mean, if you put a nofollow on it, you're sort of doing your site a little bit of disservice. Mm-hmm. So if you can find a way to go ahead and make sure that you don't have nofollow on your own internal links, that's probably a good idea.
So the whole PR sculpting concept, not the best idea.
Yeah, exactly. And so the analogy that I used, I'll try to wing it here, was you basically have this triangle of your site, and this root of your page is what gets the most links, so it has the highest page rank. So the best thing to do is think about how can you make your site so your pages that have the best bang for the buck, the highest impact, the best ROI, get linked to right from the root page or pretty close to the root page. Instead of trying to have the pages, through 8 levels of links and then sculpting them so that Googlebot can find its way to this particular page, just go ahead and take that stuff that's really good and make it just a click or 2 clicks away from your root page. So the site architecture of how to do your site can be a lot more helpful than trying to sculpt it with nofollow.
Okay. So nobody asked about caffeine, and that's made you sad a little on the inside, I guess. So let's talk about caffeine a little bit. Now, we had spoken back in November, I guess, at PubCon about caffeine going to roll out right after the holidays. Hasn't really done that. I think they'd rolled it to one data center at that point, and we're still sitting on the same data center? Or?
That's right, and it's just a nice thing to be cautious. You don't want to just roll out stuff willy-nilly when it's a very large rewrite of your indexing infrastructure. So there's nothing that's gone wrong. Everything is still on track. We're just trying to be very careful and make sure that we have high-quality results. So we're still live at one data center. In the coming weeks and months, we'll probably roll out to every data center. And this is just my complete personal opinion. This is not my Google hat on, but my guess is the next data center is probably one that will that Europe will hit, if I had to guess. So everything's still on track, everything's still on schedule. That's the reason I haven't done a new blog post, is because there's nothing really new to report. But things still look like a green light. We just want to play it extra safe, and everything looks good. And in the coming months, I think everybody will see it.
Now, on the one data center where you're looking at caffeine. Yep. I know we'd also talked in November about site speed becoming more of a factor, and I would assume, and I've had some discussions with some other folks, Bruce Clay and some guys like that, about this site speed thing is kind of a sliderable. Mm-hmm. You could throttle that up and down. Site speed could be more or less important depending on what you guys think. I mean, so on the test data center, I guess, or the caffeine enabled data center, have there been some tweaks up and down with site speed to see
Right. Yeah, that's a very good question. So it turns out caffeine is completely independent of the fact that we're looking at potentially having site speed as a signal. So instead, the way that we're doing it is completely independent. So caffeine's rolling out, and then we have our ranking.
So you guys can slide that in the normal wild listings.
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah. So the nice thing is people shouldn't stress out too much about site speed, and the reason is that we're always going to care first and foremost about quality. How good is a page for users? How much does it help them find the information that they needed? Only in cases where it's like roughly the same quality of content page, but this one's a lot faster or this one's a lot slower, those are the sort of situations where it might make a difference. I think a lot of people said, if my site's not fresh, then it's going to drop by hundreds of ranks and that sort of thing. And that's not the case. What we want to do is, if a site is really good in terms of freshness, or really bad in terms of site speed, or really bad in terms of site speed, then you want to have a little bit of allowance for it. But don't think that it's going to be like the largest of the 200 factors.
So it's not going to be a situation, sort of like duplicate content, where you have, there's not necessarily a penalty. You just don't do as well if you have duplicate content.
Yeah.
So, but we're not going to get into like a NASCAR shaving the door handles off the side of the website to make it run a little faster, and that'll get you out, right?
No, so if your site is twice as fast, it's not going to rank twice as high, not anywhere close to that. Now, that said, Site speed is really great for your users, and there have been a lot of studies, including by Bing and by Google, that sort of say the faster your site goes, the more users want to use it, the more sort of queries they do, all that sort of stuff. So if you can make your site faster, it's great, but I would do it primarily for users. I wouldn't stress about it in terms of for search engines.
All right. And we had a couple other things that, yesterday, I guess, at the keynote, there was a discussion about PR and the overemphasis on the PR rank, and it was suggested, maybe Peter had talked about, maybe PR needs to be, because it is taken on this, life of its own, sort of as being representative of the whole index, where it's just one factor. So suggested another name or another term for PR. Is that how serious is that?
I don't think we're going to rebrand PageRank, but at the same time, we definitely see that webmasters can get a little too obsessed with PageRank. And part of it is that, just a little bit, because the toolbar does have PageRank. That's one thing that they can see, that they can optimize for. So people pay a lot of attention to that. But there's over 200 different signals that get used, and PageRank is not the only one that matters. So I think Peter Norvig was making a really good point, that people pay a lot of attention to that, but what they should be thinking about is great content, all the other factors that really make a difference. And so I don't think we'll rename it, but people can get a little too obsessed with PageRank, and it's healthy to think about not just the reputation of your page, but the sheer quality and the content that you've got on it too.
So now maybe we come up with another, a contest or something, we name our indexing algorithm or something. I don't know. So and then in terms of, it was also talked about. Danny had brought up the whole concept of crawling the web or indexing the web versus a push model. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Because these guys weren't there, and kind of explain, because I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So back up a year and 6 months or so ago, at a real-time crunch-up, there was this new thing from Google announced that's called PubSub. Some people abbreviate it as push, and it is kind of a good abbreviation because it is like pushing content to people instead of people having to poll for it. So what I mean by that is, suppose you subscribe to WebPro News, you like to read their blog. Your blog reader under the covers is checking like every hour, is there a new post, is there a new post, is there a new post? And that's kind of a waste of resources. You also might have to wait 59 minutes before you find out there was a new post. So PubSub turns that on its end. It says, you know what, when I do a post, I'm going to send a ping to what's called a hub, and then that hub will alert all the people who subscribe to me. So all the blog readers, blog lines, search engines, whoever who are interested in that particular feed or that blog or that post, they will automatically get a ping as soon as it's updated. And this is live on FriendFeed, for example. So thanks to the power of PubSub, you can do a blog post, hit submit, and it'll show up on FriendFeed like 6 seconds later.
Sounds like a Nickelodeon show.
It does, doesn't it? But it's like kind of the dream of what you want. You don't have to start crawling the web to find all this content. Maybe some small site, you might only find a chance to crawl its pages once a week. But if that site is blogging like every 20 minutes, boom, you hit the submit button and the search engines can find out about it. Now the tension is that, of course, spammers would use this as well. So you can't just say, I'm going to index everything that everybody pushes to me. So finding the right balance there is tricky, but the potential is really, really exciting. And it's completely open, by the way. It's not tied to Google. It's not a Google-specific technology. So any search engine could subscribe to all these feeds, and then, boom, they could all get updates. In fact, I'm happy to keep talking if until you cut the cord. In fact, WordPress just announced this week that all 10.5 million of their blogs are adding push capability. So if you are on WordPress.com, or in fact if you're using FeedBurner, you're automatically sending out these updates. Now, right now we don't use every single one of them, and we'll never use all of them because there will be spammers on different blogs. But even on WordPress.org, if you run a WordPress blog on your own software, there are now WordPress plugins where you can say, install this, and then you push, and everybody who's interested in your blog will get updated instantly. And the ability for a search engine to subscribe to those feeds and instantly update is something that's hugely exciting. So, you could definitely imagine the reputable blogs getting very fast updates, the ones that we think are trustworthy, and then over time maybe ramping that up so more and more people have the ability to do just like instant indexing.
And I talked to Peter a few minutes yesterday about spam. There's always been spam, and Avinash, I think, said this morning that there was spam on the